Okay.
I'll give a verbal cue when it's live.
Okay. My favorite emoji, or my most used one, is pretty popular, actually. I'm surprised.
We're live.
Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. So welcome from Design Buddies and Memorizely. Big shout out to Jacqueline for helping make this all happen, as well as Crystal, PG, Grace, and Jabri for joining us today or tonight, wherever y'all are at, maybe in the morning. Before we go ahead and get started, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share a little bit about Design Buddies, as well as some kind of administrative stuff before we get started. So Design Buddies is a online design community founded by Grace almost 2 years ago now, which is kind of crazy. It's a really great place to just be your authentic self and to connect and support and meet other designers. If y'all haven't checked out the community on Discord, I would definitely encourage y'all to check it out. And it's just a really great place to level up your design skills and meet new friends and peers and grow together. Jacqueline, do you want to share a little bit about Memorizely?
Sure, yeah. Hey, I'm Jacqueline. I am the events and partnerships manager at Memorizely. And basically, we are a school of live online boot camps for UX UI design. And we're also a free community of designers from across the world. And we value accessible design education. So that's kind of a little quick, super fast background on us. Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Jack, and the rest of the Design Buddies team.
Cool. And then one quick thing on house rules for our event today. So all of our events will be recorded. You'll be able to check them out on YouTube. Definitely engage via the chat. Feel free to ask questions. We have a Slido, so we can upvote questions and we'll get to those at the end, or we'll be able to answer some live. Just feel free to either raise your hand or just ask in the chat. Keep sharing all those emojis. That was pretty cool seeing that big flood of them. It's kind of like a Twitch chat. And then we also have a networking sheet. So please refrain from sharing your LinkedIn and just add all of your contact info there. That will be linked in the chat momentarily as well. And like I said, we have a Slido. At the end, we're probably going to take some time to take a big group selfie. And you'll be able to see that on socials as well, across on LinkedIn, Instagram, all that good stuff. We have a link for these Design Buddies backgrounds with Fluffle, our friendly neighborhood design buddy, no pun intended. And yeah, if you find any really helpful takeaways, feel free to share them on social media. We always love seeing that. And we hope you all have a really good time in this event and meet a bunch of cool folks that you can design and maybe collaborate with in the future. Okay, now let me get rid of this. There we go. Okay, and welcome to our event, Diverse Paths to Design. And we're going to get started with PG, and he'll share his story. Like I said, feel free to just ask questions in the chat as we go. I'll pass it over to you, PG. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack. And yeah, hey, everyone. I'm just quickly going to share my screen here. Off into FigJam. Just going to make sure people can see my screen. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so again, welcome everyone. My name is PG, as we mentioned. That's about as far as I'll go. I'll share the rest of my story in a sec. Yeah, I'm super stoked to be here. Get a bit of a chance to talk about my unconventional path into design. So yeah, without further ado, we can get started. The year is 1994, and this is me as a little baby. I was born in Italy and then raised in Texas on a military base for the first few years of my life. This time I had no aspirations, no idea what design was, no problems or troubles, truly the best time of my life. But of course it couldn't last forever. So fast forward to me, becoming a teenager. And as I became a teen, circa 2008, I really developed a love for skateboarding, a love for hanging out with my friends and just like having fun and kind of like getting my first taste of creative stuff. I wasn't very good at skateboarding, but what I was pretty good at was taking videos and taking photos of skating. And so I really started to develop that passion, which is a passion that I still hold today. And that led, of course, to me kind of working through that passion and developing it into something a little bit more serious. You can see some pretty horrid, awkward photos of me as I start to graduate high school. And I went on to study film production in LA, in Los Angeles. I went to a school called Loyola Marymount University. And obviously I picked LA as kind of like the world capital for skateboarding and filmmaking. And I really enjoyed making videos, but as I got into film school, I realized that working on proper film sets is absolutely brutal. As a student, you'd often work like 12 to 16-hour days on the weekends because you had class during the week. So like really cramming all this time in there. And so, yeah, it was pretty brutal. It's not something a lot of people can do. And I certainly had a very tough time. But in this program, in my second year, my sophomore year, I took a graphic design / Photoshop elective. Messed around with Photoshop, of course, Corel Draw, just a bunch of like graphic / design tools for the first time. And I really, really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun and it was a cool little elective. I then went on in my senior year to take an editing class, which I absolutely hated, despised the professor. And so within the first actual like 2 or 3 hours of the class, I dropped it in class and switched to a motion design / After Effects class. And I really loved that. Like that was one of my favorite classes I took in college. And it really got me to realize that I enjoyed making things on computers and just like getting creative and creating little things out of thin air on a machine. It was really cool and really fun. Yeah, led me to realize how much I love computers and designing for them. But after this time in college, after a few years, I graduated 2016 and obviously graduated from film school. So I moved to Oregon to take on to my first big boy film job. And it was a great time. I basically, we specialized in aerial media. So I was just like a general creative, spent lots of time with my feet hanging out of the helicopter, taking photos and videos, flying to remote parts of the US to shoot, again, videos and photos for campsites and really cool places. But as kind of like a general creative, I also had the responsibility of doing like graphic design for social media, doing some graphic design for events and posters and things like that. And my last sort of big project while I was at this company was a website. It was my first time actually trying to make a website. I was totally inexperienced. I like did a mix of Illustrator and Wix, which in hindsight are like not the best tools for this kind of work. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like my favorite thing that I did the entire time at this company. I got a chance to like explore different areas of design, and that really like lit something in me. But then in 2017, I had some trouble. I had some issues with immigration in the US. It's quite complicated for anyone who hasn't dealt with it. And so I had these issues and had to return back to Italy, to my home country, on this sort of involuntary sabbatical. It wasn't a great time. It was pretty bad. I have sort of blocked out kind of a good chunk of it. But one thing that, one positive thing that came out of it was, spending lots of time alone at home doing not much. What I did have time to do was watch YouTube videos. So I watched lots of like Zimri Mainfield, The Future, Kel Lauren, basically lots of like graphic / design YouTubers. And just like flooding my brain with this content was what really like kicked it into me and made me realize how much I love design and that I really wanted to do it as a career, despite having just spent the last 5 years perfecting my filmmaking skills. So as I was in this sabbatical period, I did start to do some graphic design for my friends, taking on little like passion projects here and there, trying to design some logos, and also designing / building, if you can call it that, some pretty terrible sites in Wix. And at the end of 2017, I somehow discovered Webflow. And that was really like the tool that I think I would say kickstarted my design career. I dove headfirst into dev and design in Webflow. I had so much fun learning it, and it gave me like a real medium to express myself and experiment and mess around with computers. In 2018, I had an old friend of mine just out of the blue reach out to me, and he was starting a cannabis startup here in Ottawa. And he was looking for somebody to be sort of like a general creative / marketing person. And yeah, I took on this offer. I moved to Ottawa, where I live today, and had the chance to learn loads and take on lots of responsibility. I was the sole creative person at this company, which was actually made up of 2 companies. And so, I led lots of marketing efforts, like creating events, managing events, lots of marketing design, social media, posters, packaging design. It was really cool. I learned a lot about packaging and print, social media management, and then of course, managing, designing, and building our websites in Webflow. And yeah, this was when I really started to get good at design. I set my sights on UX. I was just starting to learn about it as I build websites. I learned about this kind of thing that's adjacent to websites. And yeah, I love the whole concept of it. I started reading about it and watching more videos, and always kept my eyes glued on the Shopify and MetaLab career pages, because those were kind of 2 of the coolest companies that I had seen as I started to explore the space of UX. But after this time, I joined a company still here in Ottawa called Samuel Associates, kind of working for marketing to government, not particularly riveting stuff, but I joined as a digital experience designer. So, this was my first full design job. And I kind of just covered all aspects of graphic design, product design, web design, kind of winging it and learning on the job. And this job had a learning and development budget, which I was lucky enough to spend on taking one of MemorizeLy's UX UI boot camps. In their early days, it was, I think, the first or second, maybe third boot camp. But either way, it was incredible. I got so much knowledge, so much confidence, and so much energy from the community. And yeah, this confidence and energy drove me to apply to lots of PD roles or product design roles. And in December of that same year, just a few months after graduating from the bootcamp, I got an offer at another company here in Ottawa called Field Effect. Yeah, I joined in January, and that was really my first real product design job and the first time that I could actually call myself a product designer. And that leads us to where we are today. After some time at Field Effect, I didn't think the in-house life was for me, the in-house startup life. So I applied to, again, one of my dream companies, MetaLab, and got an offer and joined, and have been there ever since as, again, a product designer. I was also lucky enough to join MemorizeLy as a bootcamp teacher, giving back to the community that gave so much to me. And yeah, beyond that, I have lots of personal side projects that I use to learn more about design and development. I also have my own side business where I work as a web developer and designer. Yeah, I just absolutely live and breathe human computer interaction. I think it's amazing that we have the opportunity to create things that help people's lives and improve people's lives on these machines that we all carry in our pockets. So yeah, stoked every day to be a product designer, despite never having imagined that I would get here. I thought my life was going to go in a very different path. Nonetheless, here we are today. Yeah, it's a bit about me, and looking forward to the future, seeing how everything evolves, and hoping to cross paths with some of you, maybe to form some new and unconventional journeys. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. It's always so fascinating to me to hear kind of the different paths that we all take and how they kind of unwind and eventually interconnect. That's crazy. You never know when someone might reach out to you, like your old high school friend, for that, and how that might lead to one opportunity or another. Kind of similarly, I used to skateboard and studied film in LA for
Nice.
a little bit too. Maybe we were there around the same time. I was never very good at skateboarding though. So
me neither.
before we move on, I just want to ask, From these kind of like cool creative starts, I'm wondering if there are any kind of maybe soft skills that you've learned from those kind of endeavors that have helped you in your position now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of them is just kind of like networking, if you will. I don't know if that's exactly how I would define it, but just like the act of, making relationships with people, not just for like to get a job, but just in general, out of curiosity, just being curious about other people, what they do, what they have to share. I think that was, first of all, a huge soft skill, but also just like a huge help in growing my career, is just meeting people, getting feedback, sharing feedback, and just, yeah, being a community member. I think is really what it is, more so than networking. Yeah, being part of a community and giving back while also like learning tons, I think is so important to everyone, designers of all levels.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of how I found Design Buddies at the start. Is I didn't really know a lot of people in person, and I just wanted to start my product design transition with a community of like-minded people. And it's kind of crazy how much you can learn by just connecting with like-minded folks and going from there. So really cool to hear. That was an awesome little presentation. I'm sure other people will have questions. If you have any questions, feel free to just raise your hand and we can call on you, or ask in the chat, or add them to Slido and we can get to those at the end. But let's keep it moving, and I'll pass it to Grace to share her journey.
Yeah, thanks. That was amazing, Kiki. I also loved your presentation. I loved all the stickers you had as well. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm Grace. So the presentation I'll be giving is, I pulled up like, it's stuff like no one on the internet has seen before. So it'll be exciting. So yeah, I haven't shared. Oh, hello everyone. Yeah, without further ado, so let's sort of devise the first pass for design. This presentation is a bit long, so I'm going to be speeding through some of the slides, but a TLDR of me is I'm currently a product designer at Electronic Arts. I founded Design Buddies, and I actually studied computer science and engineering and bioengineering at SCU. Bioengineering was my bachelor's and computer science engineering was my master's. And so I have zero design formal education experience, and I'm working full time now, but I've learned a lot throughout the way as well. And yeah, I'm from California, SF Bay Area. I see a lot of y'all from the Bay Area in the chat, and I have a lot of random side hustles because I just like to do random side projects all the time. Because I learned all these different skills that later helped me in my design career as well, which I'll be talking through. Just a TLDR, growing up, I wanted to be an anime artist. I was a huge otaku. If y'all like anime, comment your favorite anime in the chat. And then I also was really into social media and blogging. Long story short, I didn't really vibe with the crowd at school. I went to a high school where everyone was like, gotta get SAT, good grades, blah, blah, and I didn't like vibe with them. And so all my friends were on the internet. So I went on social media and blog. And in college, I actually studied bioengineering and pre-med. This was because I felt like society always glorified STEM, and I thought that was the only career that meant like success in my limited worldview at that time. I was also an avid cross-country and track runner, so I wanted to learn how to biohack myself to run faster. I see a lot of anime in the chat. Love fellow otaku buddies here. Around college, I was just like, I hate this. I don't like what I'm doing. So I went back to my roots in like anime and games. So I pivoted to computer science and game design. Did a bunch of VR stuff as well. Didn't really know what I wanted to do after I graduated, and then explored the internet, found UI UX and product design. Along the way, I've started an art business, and then built Design Buddies because just for fun, and some of these took off, some of these didn't, and I learned a lot and iterated along the way as well. So yeah, this is the beginning. This is me. Found somewhere in my house on the refrigerator. I was born in Santa Clara, both parents working in education. And so education STEM was in leadership was all like forced in my brain. Yeah, the cheeks definitely stay. in the chat. Yeah. And yeah, I remember I was like 4 years old. My parents were like, gonna get a PhD too, just like us, right? I was like, yeah, I didn't even know what a PhD was. Is it like permanent head damage? But they're like, no. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I just had a lot of coffee just now. But yeah, this is me with my sister. I love like vibing. Like I like all my life, I just love vibing, dancing around with my sister. Yeah, just me vibing in my house. I continue to vibe today. I have never shown this on the internet before, so yeah, in kindergarten, I was the only Asian kid in my in my school. Only I'm one of the only few Asian kids. I felt like I stood out a lot. I was really shy. And I had this like mushroom bowl cut. I don't know if y'all are familiar, but there's this like this meme on subtle Asian traits where a lot of people had like bowl cuts. This was me. I hated getting my photo taken because I did not like my bowl cut. So this is me in kindergarten. I was really shy because I was like, oh, camera, get away. But I love to draw bunnies. So this is part of why Design Buddies, the mascot, is Fluffle. I love drawing bunnies. I love playing hide and seek. I was an aspiring crayon maker. I saw a documentary about crayons in kindergarten, and I was asked what I wanted to be when I grow up. I was like, crayon maker. And that was like my whole mantra. I just didn't like the camera. Yeah, so this is me in my kindergarten class. And yeah, I loved games. Feel free to comment in the chat if y'all like these games as well, but they're a huge part of my life. I didn't really like vibe with a lot of people in school, so all my friends are online. One of my proudest accomplishments is I'm level 200 on MapleStory. This was actually how I got introduced to like online communities and piqued my interest in the metaverse because I was on MapleStory. So I achieved level 200 on MapleStory February 15th at 2012. I forgot to include the year at 8:33 p.m. Pacific time. I was so excited that I fell off my chair and I just like flexed the whole world. But yeah, this is after Big Bang though. But MapleStory ultimately brought me to game dev and design, which ultimately led me to UX and product design. So being in MapleStory was kind of like what inspired me to do design in general. I just love the overall aesthetic of this game. It's so beautiful that I got into drawing and later found design. And I actually went to sleep at 8 p.m., woke up at 3 a.m. every day to play MapleStory because my parents wanted me to study. They thought I was sleeping so well while I was playing MapleStory. I was this random 14-year-old girl bossing a bunch of 29-year-old dudes around. So that was my childhood. All because I didn't vibe with people at school. So yeah, that's my MapleStory. And name is Moo Egg, and you can see the bunny. I love bunnies. You probably see this reoccurring theme here. Yeah, I woke up at 3 a.m. to play MapleStory. Yeah, and so middle school. So this was me in 8th grade. This was our yearbook photo. We had to tell the yearbook people like what we want to be when we grow up. I put Pokemon trainer because I love Pokemon. I want to be the very best. I was just like a shy kid trying to break out of my shell. I had this like crude sense of humor. I told a lot of poop jokes and from comics and manga. I got in trouble a lot. Got sent to the office. I even sang the Pokemon theme song in Barbie Girl in front of my whole school. And sometimes I randomly sing that in Discord communities where no one knows my name. So, yeah, but I got bullied a lot because I was just like this random kid trying to fit in. I loved making people laugh and keeping people on their toes. But people like, kids are mean. And so once they see someone's different from them, they tend to like pick on it. So I got bullied a lot. I have a lot of stories from that, but ultimately I'm like really glad all this happened because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for those experiences. And so high school, I was a proud otaku. Yes, I took those photos. I was an aspiring quote unquote Tumblr girl. So these 2014 vibes. I drew, ran, and blogged a lot. I was obsessed with all things like Hawaii. And yeah, I had this like aesthetic Tumblr blog, aesthetic Instagram, trying to like fit in some way. I just like love bunnies and those kind of things. Yeah, and yeah, love Tumblr. I loved anime art. In high school, I never really liked school. I thought it was boring because I couldn't see like the use cases with what I was learning in school. So I drew a lot of anime art. I drew these at like cross country and track meets and in class. I remember drawing these in my Chinese class because I was bored. So yeah, I have MapleStory. I love biology, so you see some chloroplasts here. A lot of MapleStory stuff, Sanrio stuff, mushrooms. And I also I took this class called AP Biology in high school. I loved it so much because I felt like the cells in your body, they tell such a cool story when they're trying to make chemical reactions. So this is your neurons doing through an action potential, which helps you with your muscle contraction. So I love just like taking facts and science and adding some personality to them, and just like making things more fun and storytelling and adding stories to these like random objects. And so I drew this manga in high school. This was like before Cells at Work came out. It was like 2013, and yeah, I just loved it. It's how I yeah, so it was before Cells at Work, but yeah, I loved AP Biology, and that's also, yeah, I continued drawing fan art. Like I was a huge fan of anime, like I'm a fan of biology as well. And yeah, and so because I didn't vibe with school, I hung out on the internet a lot, and I also struggled with comparing myself to others. Like I feel like as a kid, you easily like attach yourself to how much you stand with other kids as well. And so I was called Grace Pace, like in running. And so I just made my blog like I run Grace Pace. And the message behind it is just like run your own pace in life. Don't compare yourself to others. I shared a lot of struggles and lessons learned from my experiences in bullying. And I found that people really like authenticity and vulnerability online. So I tried to carry that out to my post today. So this was 2014 when I started this blog, and it kind of blew up. I just like kind of just like talked about like life and just try to be like relatable and wholesome, and yeah, just sharing stuff I learned. Running was a huge part of my life. Long story short, my mother paid me to go to the gym with her, and that's when I discovered I was fast. And then I went to nationals a couple of times in high school, and that was really fun. And then things went downhill for running for me in college, but more on that later. And so college, so this is me again, Pokemon, wanting to be the very best. My college freshman year dorm room, and this was my outfit on my first day of college. I carried this like Pokeball with me. I loved Rillakkuma, and I was this bioengineering major, all sunshine, rainbowy. Wasn't aware of what hardships life would hit me in college. But as naive as I was, first day of college, I was like, I want to be a neurosurgeon, MD, PhD, professional runner, blogger, motivational speaker. But you know, I was just doing things for my resume. Like I do not like studying. Like, and so yeah, don't do things just for a resume. And yeah, so I did a lot of research on stuff. On gene therapy. It was very cool. These are human embryonic kidney cells. And I worked with taking some selfies with them, selfies. Yeah, those are fun days. I've discovered my favorite part of this cell work. I hated the lab work, but I love like overlaying the photos in Photoshop and adding like cool filters in them. Like the Photoshop was my favorite part of this like whole lab work. So I knew I was probably in the wrong career, but I love Photoshop. I continue to draw fan art of biology. His chloroplast, mitochondria, Nella nucleus, Dr. Cation, think like a proton, always positive. Yeah, I just love anime and biology. And I created a game called Selfie. This was a biology-inspired VR game where we can become a cell in VR. And that's how I learned that I can just use the internet and to learn things online. I'm not limited by my major, because one thing is in undergrad, I felt really stuck. Like I felt like, oh, I'm a bioengineering CS major. I have to only do that for my career. I can't do anything else. But I realized, oh yeah, I can just like do whatever I want. Like I don't have to listen to anyone. Like I had a lot of professors telling me like, you should stop making your game, try more in school. I'm just like, YOLO, it's my life. I'll just like look on the internet and like learn whatever I want, build whatever I want. So built Selfie. You can check out the case study on my website, but it's really fun. It's when I learned how to like make 3D models and use Unreal and game engines and stuff. So love games, love cells, and love storytelling and education. This actually led me to my internship at Institute of Surgical, where this is actually my job title. It was like a VR robotic surgery game developer intern. And I basically made games to train surgeons to do surgery. I did a lot of like user research with surgeons, usability testing. It was really fun, but I would say like 60 to 90% of it was actually like programming. And I realized I didn't really like coding. Like I know it's like super important and super impactful, but like for me as a designer, it was really hard for me to see the impact I was making if I felt like I was stuck on the same problem for like 5 hours and just having to test different use cases and stuff. So that's what kind of drew me out of software. But I still like learned a lot from that experience and learned a lot about the medical device industry. And on the side, I did start my own art business just because I was really inspired by seeing a lot of artists tabling at anime conventions on the internet. And I was like, oh, I want to do the same. So I made candy leaf designs just because I wanted to. And for those y'all thinking about starting your own business, like just do it. Like if you wait and there's like no perfect time, like, and also like you don't need permission from anyone to tell you. Like I held back. I wanted to do this for a long time, but I thought I had to like get good grades in school. Then in industry, I realized no one cares about your grades. So I'm like, I should do this in college, but that's okay. So yeah, just do it. And yeah, I love bunnies and chloroplasts. So this is like 2019, as you can see the reoccurring theme here in my life, bunnies. And yeah, table anime conventions, this is pre-COVID. Had a lot of experience working with like meeting other artists, building my own business and stuff. Yeah, I made some merch. It was really fun. I love cats and fruits. Yeah, and some more bunnies, Bobo Bunny, bunnies everywhere too, biology. So see a recurring theme here. Oh, I see a lot of chat. I'll try to address them as soon as possible. But yeah, I still have them. I still make them, yeah. And then I started Design Buddies actually in April of 2020. So I was trying to go into product design, but I felt like a small potato in this like big world of design. And around that time, the design communities I was particularly in, I felt like it was really scary, like really, really intimidating. Like I was afraid to like ask questions, and I was like, this is not wholesome. I just start my own. And yeah, now here we are today, and we've grown a lot. But it started from me just wanting to make some buddies in design and realizing that everyone wants to make buddies in design. And yeah, I just remember the thing that really like sparked this was I asked like this question about like, how does a case study work? Because I was like really confused when I was Googling it. And I was like shunned for like being a beginner or something in some kind of like large Facebook group. I was like, okay, bye. And I just like made my own. So yeah, thanks for that experience. I made Design Buddies because I was like, nah, it's gonna be wholesome. Yeah, and so yeah, here we are. And I recently got more into illustrations and 3D art. I realized I like went through 2 major burnouts in 2021, partially because driven by ego and wanting to please others, and realizing my own limits. And I recognized during break, I recognized the importance of just doing art for myself and just for fun without any requirements. So yeah, I just made these. And yeah, so specifically for design adventures, I started with just like my self-teaching adventures, started with just like learning the fundamentals, going to hackathons, doing some projects, and then applying the skills I learned to do some startups and freelance work, did an internship at EA, and have been working full-time ever since December 2020. Yeah, so yeah, and this is my family. We like wearing hats. Yeah, this is me and my sister, my mother, father. I never show these on the internet. It's probably on Facebook. You can probably find it. But yeah, So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in my presentation. Feel free to connect. And yeah, so that concludes my presentation.
Thanks for
Yeah, thanks
sharing.
for the chat. I couldn't keep up with I had a lot of coffee, so I might talk too fast, but hopefully that was okay.
No, you're good. You're good. Only you would be able to fit in that entire life story into that amount of time. That was amazing. Thanks for sharing. It was hilarious seeing some of those photos that we haven't seen before. Um, I think this is a great time to start answering some of the questions in Slido. But before some of our panelists hop in, feel free to feel free to answer any of these questions. Grace, I think this is a perfect one for you, which is looking at your background and what you've just shared about like all of these creative endeavors where you just ended up kind of just going for it and just doing it. Sometimes it looks like it can be a really hard thing just to get started. What is some advice you have for folks that are trying to stand out, who don't really have this traditional design background or maybe necessarily know where to start, and so they can stand out in these job applications?
Yeah, I would like make a list of what you're interested in, and maybe like those Google search or ask some communities like how you can learn more about those topics you're interested in, and like lay out a roadmap for yourself. And for example, like this week I'll learn about interaction design. This week I'll learn about like visual design, and just try to break down your goal into digestible pieces and schedule them out, and just go from there as well. And that helps, and everything just like builds up on top of each other.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and I think this is another good one, specifically just like kind of going off of that on standing out is, it was one we asked PG earlier too, but from your background, and any panelists feel free to just hop in on this question. There are all these kind of transferable skills that maybe you weren't aware of when you started in your role now as a UX designer or researcher. What are some of the most valuable ones that you've found that have helped you not only just succeed in this role, but kind of land it in the first place? And we can also just mull that one over. Anyone feel free to jump in or just think about it for a bit. Yeah, go ahead, PG.
Yeah, I know I already answered the previous one, but I think just in general, like people skills, like, you know, like product design is really a lot about understanding people and being able to listen to users and being able to understand people's problems. I think there are a ton of roles where you have to do that. Like if you've ever been in customer service in any sort of capacity, like you have learned to deal with people, you have learned to understand them and listen to them and deal with their problems. Not just customer service. I mean, there's tons of roles. I studied marketing, which is not really related to product design at a glance, but it's a similar concept, right? It's about understanding human psychology and catering to it. And again, solving people's problems, whether it's through an application or a design or just being, you know, a good customer service rep. So yeah, anything to do with people really is a really valuable skill in product design.
Yeah, and just kind of going off of that, I remember when I was first trying to make my transition, I was speaking with this really prolific designer, and I was worried about the same thing. It's like, oh, I don't have this traditional background in design. I'm worried about standing out, especially maybe if I don't necessarily have the same technical aptitude at that point. And she just kind of flipped the switch for me and kind of changed my whole thinking on the matter, was to lean into the skills that really had you be successful in whatever endeavor that you're in right now. And that'll ultimately help you stand out. And the technical stuff will come as long as you're dedicated and you work at it. And with that, we'll keep it going. Who's next, Crystal or Jabri? I think it's Crystal.
Yeah, I can start.
Great.
Let me just share my screen. This one. Okay, am I sharing the correct screen? Okay, awesome. Hi everyone, thanks for having me. And thank you, Grace, for this event. Everyone, I'm Crystal. Why is my PowerPoint not working? Okay, there we go. Oh no. Sorry, technical difficulties. Anyway, my name is Crystal. I am a designer based in Toronto, and I'm currently working as a product designer at Microsoft Teams. When I'm not working on design, I like to make music. I like to watch anime. So if you have anything to say about the new Attack on Titan episodes or Demon Slayer, talk to me. I'm very passionate about them. And I just like exploring different things and trying out, making art. I recently started knitting, so I just dabble in all sorts of things. And I've also recently been trying to be more involved in the design community and started mentoring at Design Buddies, and hence why I'm here today. So like most of you today and all the panelists, I did not come from a traditional design background, and that's why I'm here and why I feel really passionate about sharing my story and hopefully some tips, some tips that worked for me to hopefully help others out there who are looking into transitioning or currently in the progress of transitioning into design. So here's my story. I don't have any baby pictures, so I'm not brave enough to show my baby pictures on here. But let's start from high school and university. I like to always consider myself a pretty creative person. I've always been very into art. Like many people here, I've always been into painting, drawing things, making music. I love singing. I was a huge musical theater kid in high school, and I was like singing all the time, very annoying. But, overall, I just really enjoy making things. And I realized I could literally sit there for hours just, working on the painting or recording a song. So, I thought I really found my passion back in high school. I feel like, oh, that's my thing. But, when university came around and I decided, I really want to pursue art or music, and I wanted to go into musical theater and perform. But my parents were weird, and they're like, that's a hobby. Don't do that. Like, don't go to school for that. But for some reason, they're also not super traditional to the sense where they want me to become a doctor or engineer. They just say, do whatever, just don't do art or music. I don't understand it, but when I went to university, I chose to study humanities and more specifically focusing on healthcare, because a part of me was always curious about how people and their lives and healths are impacted by their environments and stuff. And I also like biology. That was my favorite science out of the three that I was taught in high school. So I was like, maybe I can look into health. Maybe that's something that could work out for me. I was also part-timing at the time at a pharmacy as a technician. And I used to tell people that I'm a drug dealer as a joke, or in icebreakers when people say, tell me a fun fact about you. I'm like, I used to be a drug dealer. But yeah, I was definitely going down that healthcare path during that time. So that was all really fun, I guess, interesting. And I learned a lot, but I also started to feel very lost and discouraged at times, because I felt like, I'm learning about all these humanitarian crises and all these problems in society, but what can I do about it? And I felt like I couldn't really make an impact, and I wasn't super passionate about it. And I wasn't able to use my creativity to do that work. So, over time, I just felt very burned out and sad and unhappy with my life. I'm like, I know I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, for sure. And I already spent 4 years in my undergrad doing this. And my future just seemed so unclear and blurry. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So after university, after graduation, that's when I started to think, I'm like, what do I really want to do? Because I spent 4 years, I could say, wasted that time on doing something I wasn't passionate about. If I want to change it, this is the time. I have to do something right now. And I decided to just kind of take charge of my life for once. And one day I came across this thing called UX design. And I was like, what is that? I had no idea what UX design was. And the only kind of design I had heard of at the time was graphic design, motion design, but it was interesting to me. I was like, what does the U stand for? What does the X stand for? It was intriguing. So I did a little bit more research. I digged a little deeper. And I learned, it's a combination of understanding people, being creative, and too many slides. Anyway, so I understand it was a combination of understanding people, being creative, and combining technology. And that was all very exciting to me because, I have the background where I studied and I solved problems for people in the healthcare system. And like I said, I love being creative. I just love making things from scratch, seeing it come to life. And last but not least, technology is a space that I hadn't tapped into and I wasn't very familiar with and had no experience in, but it's growing so fast. And it's just a very interesting thing. I felt like maybe I can challenge myself to just learn that. So after graduation, this really brave part of me, I don't know where it came from. I just like, maybe I should take a chance and learn design and see where this would take me. So I started taking a short course on a platform called Design Lab on basic like design principles like color theories, typography, spacing. I loved art class in high school, so I had learned some of these, but I had never had formal training in art or design. So I thought this was like a good starting point to relearn some of those basic stuff. I was considering going back to either doing a master's in design or doing a boot camp, but I was like, I just finished school. Do I really want to go back to school? And am I really about to spend 10K on a boot camp? I was still in debt, like student debt. So that was not an option for me. So I took this short course on Design Lab, and that was really helpful. Another big part of my learning journey is also from reading a lot of articles. So I subscribe to several design publications on Medium, one of them being UX Collective. So I would just subscribe to them, and every morning I would get them in my mailbox. And the first thing I'd do is just wake up like half asleep and just scroll through them. And I would read a lot of like articles on design ideas, career tips, and opinion pieces. Another thing I still do is to talk to a lot of strangers, and maybe some of you might be familiar with this, is just sending cold messages to designers on LinkedIn that I see, maybe I've read an article from them that I, was really intrigued by, or I want to learn from them in person. So I would just talk to them, reach out and ask for like a coffee chat to learn more about their experience and the industry. So with all these information that I was learning, I kind of took them and started just practicing creating designs. I came up with ideas, just worked on personal projects, building my portfolio, like bombarding other designers with my portfolio to get feedback. And eventually, one day in 2019, I was very lucky to stumble across an intern opportunity for a healthcare startup at my university's startup incubator, which is like this group where different groups of students can come together and work on a startup idea. And I joined one of the groups to help them build their app. So at the time, I had zero design experience. I was hesitant, but I applied anyway. And I really tried to highlight my background in healthcare because I'm like, this is the perfect transition. Like I had experience in healthcare, so maybe I can bring it into this. And, and I just really wanted to highlight how I could bring that to the table. So yeah, I got the offer, super excited, really happy, just happy to be working with other people because before that I was just on my own and I had very little feedback. I didn't know if I was doing things right or wrong. So yeah, that was a great first experience. And a few months after the internship, I got another internship at Capital One, which later turned into a full-time role. I worked there for a little bit over a year. And then later, last May, I moved into a new role at Microsoft. So this whole thing seems like it was super quick and super easy, like bam, 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 3 jobs. But I really want to focus on the time between my first internship and my job at Capital One, where I really struggled. Like that was a bad time for me. Because when I first got my internship, like the first one, I felt good, felt validated. I thought, wow, this is so easy. Like I got the first internship in like a couple months. And I thought it's the perfect gateway into design now that my foot is in the door, or so I thought. But, no, that's when I realized I was probably still not very qualified. I was struggling to learn more stuff I wanted to learn, but I didn't know where to start, where to continue, what to learn. I was applying to jobs even though I knew I wasn't qualified for, and continued to get lots of rejections. I was trying to apply to internships, but I wasn't a student at the time. I was already graduated, so a lot of companies don't take in people for internships. So that was not a good time. It was a very conflicting time. I felt very hopeful because I was like excited about the future, but hopeless because I was losing confidence with every rejection letter I got. So eventually I got out of that phase, but it was a time that I really wish I had more guidance and support on. So looking back, I looked at what worked and what didn't work for me and what kind of helped me get out of that slump. And I came up with a few suggestions and tips. So hopefully that can be helpful to other people. So the first thing is to understand that your worth is not determined by a job offer. That's something that I knew, but I was struggling to really feel it and understand it. You might feel discouraged when you're getting rejection letters. That's how I was feeling, and I felt like I wasn't good enough. But one thing I forgot to look at is to celebrate your growth along the way. So like looking back at the fact that you decided to make a switch, to take the initiative, to learn something new, you should really be proud of that. And I think people need to like cut themselves some slack. And that's, I think, something I would say to myself back then. Tip number 2 is, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. We're all better at some things than other things, and that's okay. Like I think it's very important to understand what you're good at and take advantage of that, like what PG was saying earlier. So if you're really good at visual designs, then take advantage of that. And if you're not good at something, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're open to learning, open to new ideas. I think that's the way to growing. Design is like an ever-changing field. Like there's always going to be new technologies, new ideas. Like it's almost impossible for you to learn it all. Like even to this day, like I can't say that I know design because there's just so much to learn. So it's important to just be open to criticism, learn things that will hopefully help you level up your design journey a little bit faster. Another thing is to build a personal brand. And when I say that, I don't really mean just drawing a logo or finding a color palette for your website. Is again, taking what's unique about you, what is your strength, and making yourself known for that. So especially for those coming from a non-traditional background, is, why does that make you different? How do you stand out from everyone else? And maybe you're a photographer turned designer. You can talk about how, I have really good composition, or I work really well with people because I take pictures of models all the time. So make that your brand and show that in portfolios, in interviews, and when you meet new people. Practice makes perfect. Similar to what I was saying about never stop learning. It's always good to keep practicing your skills. So you can find inspiration on sites like Behance, Dribble for UI and visual designs. And Grace mentioned this earlier, that you don't need permission to get started on something. I've heard a lot of people say like, I don't have any real life client experience. I don't have any projects. And I think you can literally find any problem in your daily life. Like if you're dealing with something, you're like, I wish there's a way to do this easier, then you can take that and just solve it, work on a personal project. You don't need permission to get started. You can do that to get familiar with the design process and the tools like Figma, Adobe XD, and whatnot. Another thing that is really helpful for practicing UI design and visual design is to find a product, maybe a website, an app, whatever you like, and literally just copy it, like replicate that, try to recreate it in the tool, just to get comfortable with like drawing shapes, drawing buttons, pushing things around, practicing visual hierarchy. Like I think that's a great way to just get better at your craft. And last but not least is, this is something I really wish I had when I was making a switch. I think Design Buddies wasn't around then, or I didn't know about it, but it's very important to know that you're not alone in this journey. There's so many people who currently is in the same spot as you, and tons of people who were in the same spot as you now. So it's great to be a part of a community and meet and learn from other people. So like design buddies, Memorizely, great places to find friends, find mentors, to just go through this with you. And yeah, and that's why we're here today. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing so much. Your slides are so pretty too. Those tips are amazing, and they address so many of the questions that we have in Slido. And we're running a little late on time, so I'm just going to pass it over to Jabri to get started. I think we're going to stick around a little past 6. So just hang in with us, and then we'll get to your questions at the end. Okay, thanks.
Hey, yeah, I can jump in. I don't have any slides, so I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm Jabri. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a UX researcher based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Saw a few people in the Twin Cities area. And yeah, I've had an interesting pathway to UX. I don't have any embarrassing little kid photos to share. But growing up, I had no idea what I really wanted to do. I love like creating and art and stuff like that, but I just, I thought it was like a way to just express myself, to get out like the things that I was interested in or the feelings that I had. So I did things like, taking videos of my family. My favorite video game growing up was Thrillville, which is like a roller coaster / amusement park building game, which weirdly relates to UX and product now that I think about it. But yeah, I just, used art as a way to express myself and to connect with others. And I went off to undergraduate school and thought I needed to major in something that made money, like that was concretely going to make me money. And I ran away from art every semester. And lo and behold, I have a degree in art and art history. So it found me. And yeah, I view art as like a way of understanding how people interact with things. So I lean more towards like photography, and sculpture, and just the ways that people interacted with space, which also relates to how I think about how people interact with a physical product or with an app or an experience. So while I was in college, I was trying to survive. So I worked a lot of food service jobs, which included like working at McDonald's, being a barista at Starbucks, working at like the aquarium, all of these different weird experiences. But really, as I think PG was mentioning earlier, that understanding of like how to interact with people and how to solve problems very quickly, was something that I was able to learn in some of those food service jobs. So like being a barista, I learned that, getting a cup of coffee at 5 p.m. means a very different thing for different people. Like I had some regulars who came in to want to grade their papers. They were professors, so they needed that cup of coffee to continue their evening. But then also like locally in the Twin Cities area, we have a large Somali population, and because a lot of the community does not consume alcohol, like going to the coffee shop was the hangout. So like that cup of coffee meant something completely differently. So I was starting to understand like how the same goal was different for all of these different like users or consumers. So that's kind of like a perspective that I bring to my work. But I graduated and I had no idea what I could do with an art degree. But I knew that I loved talking to people and just had like that experience of customer service. So I went into a customer success role at a startup, and there I was on the phones and I was doing emails, and I got to know the product very, very well. And it was to the point where I was starting to make suggestions about things that we could sort of fix in the product. And that's when I realized that that was an actual thing I could do, that being either a product person or like a UX designer was a career. And so being in a startup space, I was able to advocate for that being an interest of mine and move into a more like associate level product role. From there, since it's a startup, I did a little bit of everything. I did some product management, some UX design, UX research, and then just like project management. So like making sure that things are constantly on track. And while I was in that more associate level role, I leaned a lot on mentorship just to like shadow people that were doing research and design to learn like while we were in the middle of specific projects. And then I also did more like educational learning through resources like Memorizely, where I got to connect with other designers and just build some of those concrete design and research skills. So I combined that all together and continue to, just build my skills, and I've now landed myself into a UX research role. So it's been a journey of like just understanding how people interact with things and how um, the ways that you connect with one another can affect like your ability to create something or to ideate together or to think about how something might be designed. So I guess my advice would just be to not take those like weird jobs that you did for granted. They have like a really big impact on you. And I talk about being a barista in my interviews now, like when people ask me about something interesting. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my journey from not knowing what UX design is, or knowing that that was a thing, to now I'm sitting in the industry and hoping to continue to grow.
Nice. Thank you for sharing and being so efficient. That was boom, boom, boom. Wow, that was really great. One thing that I've definitely noticed as a parallel across all of y'all is this really thoughtful consideration for things that are happening around you and ways to approach that kind of creatively. And I think that can kind of be summed up as like the learning never really stops, and you never really know until once you've experienced something how you might be able to use that in the future. I love the coffee example. That was a really great one. And I think this is a perfect time now for us to, before we get into the questions, take a quick group photo. I'll pass it over to you, Grace, as the group photo expert.
Yeah, and so we'll do a static one first and then a waving one for our Instagram story. So we like to spice things up over at Design Buddies. And yeah, so we have a static one and then a wave. Like you can dance, you can dab, whatever you want for our Instagram story at design.buddies. So yeah, I'll just count down for y'all to turn on your cameras if you wish. If you don't wish to be in a group photo but still want to be included, you can react and you'll have your emoji up here as well. You can even use your favorite emoji, as Jack said in the beginning icebreaker questions as well. So I'm gonna count down and yeah, and also yeah, turn on your camera if you want to be on TV.
Which are we doing first?
We're doing this photo first and then
Okay.
like the wave for Instagram story. Yeah, all right, 10. Oh, by the way, you can also bring different objects if you want. Like I have a bear. I also have Fluffle, which is on the other side. I have Fluffle. You can bring anything you want. I love the cat. I love the animals. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Oh, anyone can like also take a group photo and post on your social media as well. Throw like repost it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Say Fluffle. I'll take multiple and choose the one everyone looks the best in. All right, we're gonna do a wave for Instagram story. Wave. By the way, I have been taking some Instagram stories, so that's why you see me on my phone. All right, ready, set, wave. Hello, buddies. We are at Diverse Paths to Design with our buddies at Memorizely. Thank you, buddies, for coming. We hope you have a nice, wonderful day, and make sure to check out our recording on our YouTube channel. Awesome. Cool. So I'll post it and we can hop into Q&A as well, Jack.
Awesome. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, so there's been a lot of great questions in this Slido. I'm going to link it one more time in the chat if you all want to get some last minute questions in. Again, let's get big thank yous in the chat for our panelists today and sharing their stories. You never know what you're going to learn from someone. So it's been really great hearing these stories. and we'll just take it from the top. The first one's kind of been touched on already. So let's start with the second one. When you switch jobs to UX, did you find it hard to break into the field? Did you apply to a lot of jobs before you got the call? And what I'm kind of like seeing underneath the surface here is like, maybe we can talk a little bit about road mapping and like effective ways to get into the position that you want. Who wants to jump in? I can start out too. I'm still a grad student, so my advice isn't as pertinent maybe as what you all will share. But when I first started reaching out to people, which I think is like a really important tool to have, and this especially I think is relevant for students, is to just play that student card. You know, people in the design community are really responsive to wanting to give back and help people out who are in similar positions as you all are in. And you can really get a lot of great conversations and insights from people like what we've heard today by just reaching out. So don't be afraid to reach out on LinkedIn or in Design Buddies or Memorizely or wherever it might be. Just definitely spark up some conversations. Try to be kind of intentional with the kind of feedback you're looking for, or maybe come with a few prepared questions. And in terms of kind of road mapping or finding it difficult to break into the field, I would just suggest getting in touch with as many people as you can, building your community, not your network, and just growing these peer-to-peer learning resources. And I'm sure one of our panelists can share something that's a little more relevant too.
All right, science, I'll start.
Thanks, Grace.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, like I majored in engineering. I don't have any sort of qualification in design. It was just sheer curiosity and sheer just doing the work. Oftentimes, like I feel like what I've seen by talking to a lot of hiring managers is they are really fascinated by people who studied something else and went into design, because you can leverage your transferable skills. Like for example, engineering, I can like work with my dev buddies and also like think in systems that way too, and also just being curious and leveraging like the transferable skills. Like I know people skills from being a barista, you can also use that to understand your customers and users and people you're impacting as well. So I would just like leverage like what you've learned from another field and help that make you stand out when you're like applying for jobs and even on the job as well. And it's also dependent on like what your background is. And yeah, and also reaching out to people and being in the community. And also like another thing is when I started reaching out to people on LinkedIn, it was 2020, and it was easy to get discouraged if you get ghosted by a few people. But for numbers, I cold messaged 400 people. And I haven't done it since. This is beginning 2020, and I had about 100 people respond to me. And had 30 coffee chats, and one of them became my job. So yeah, it's a numbers game. So don't feel discouraged if you reach out to a lot of people and don't get more responses. Like it happens to everyone. So just keep going. They could be busy. It's not on you. It's like not your fault at all. Just keep reaching out.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely don't be discouraged. It only takes one conversation to get that role. Okay. Let's keep going down the line here of questions. Here's a good one. How can one develop in UX research? Jabri, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you can approach it similarly to how people grow in their UX design skills of taking on a case study. I know as part of like the Memorizely bootcamp that I did, there's a case study that you work on, and I decided to take, like, I built my UX design skills with it because that was part of the task, but I also really focused in on the research aspect of it and like what I would recommend as a next step for others to take. Like if I was a researcher recommending for like a designer to take that and like action like do action on the steps. So I'd say approaching it that way. And then there's a lot of just like resources and articles and stuff. So I mean, key ones I look at is like D Scout or UX Collective. Just searching on Medium about UX research and like the key things to think about when choosing what type of research to do. But like a next step, I would say, is you could run your own research session through like Maze, like something where you can spend a couple of bucks to get real people to test out your product or your design or whatever it is, and do some research on it and then synthesize what you would recommend as a recommendation.
Yeah, I love that of just tackling it the same way you might a product design case study. That makes a ton of sense. You can always go into a design community as well and find people that would be willing to participate in surveys and other kind of research that can help validate the work that you're doing. Awesome. Okay, we're going to get to a couple more before we finish up here. I know we're a bit past 6. Let's see. Okay. So many roles are asking for 3+ years of experience as a requirement. For those of us that are looking for more junior roles, how can we get beyond this challenge? Anyone want to tackle that one?
I shared a link in the chat of an article I wrote. So on this like this exact topic, which is why I thought it was relevant. But I can say I interviewed the talent acquisition lead at Shopify and at MetaLab to get their thoughts on this, because I noticed it was a very, it's a big topic. Lots of people talk about it on Twitter, design Twitter, design LinkedIn. I think there is some element to that, unfortunately, especially as we move to remote. Like there's lots of more senior opportunities as companies try to build teams from the top down. But a lot of times the 3+ years isn't specifically like 3+ years with the title of product designer. My role at MetaLab, I think, had 3+ years, maybe even upwards of 5 years. And I did not have that by any means. But going back to what we've talked about before, you have lots of transferable skills in a lot of your roles. So yeah, again, those 3 years don't necessarily have to be 3 years of product design experience specifically. And also one thing that I heard from both the people that I interviewed is, 3 years is generally like a metric that they put, but there are people who have worked for 10 years and don't have nearly the amount of experience that a person who's worked for 1 year has. So 3 years is a bit of a rough line usually. But typically what they'll do is maybe look at your portfolio, see what kind of skills you have, and does your level of skill and experience match up with what they'd expect somebody with 3 years to have? So yeah, take 3 years as sort of like a guideline, but do apply for those roles. As long as you have strong work to show, then you'll be good, at least for the jobs that really matter. And don't just look at a year on your resume.
Yeah, totally agree. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, especially the personal part. Definitely don't be discouraged by those. Don't let them weed you out with the 3+ years, 5+ years. Just go for it. And I guess we can finally tackle, I'm going to put 2 of these together. How do you tackle imposter syndrome? And at the same time, they're not totally related, but this person wants to start working on their portfolio, but they don't really know where to begin. Do you have any advice or resources?
I can speak to those ones. So for imposter syndrome, I feel like, first of all, it's to know that it never really goes away, no matter how many years you've been in the industry and how long you've been working. It's always going to be there. But I've kind of grown to embrace it in a way. And I think that's a way to kind of tackle it, is to think that if you're feeling imposter syndrome, that you're not good enough, or that you don't deserve where you are right now, I think that's a sign that you are getting better, you are growing, you're getting out of your comfort zone. So that's the first thing to notice, is that it is a good thing if you're feeling imposter syndrome. And another thing is to think back, well, if you think you don't deserve, to be where you are right now, also understand, well, like, you were there for a reason. Imposter syndrome often happens when, let's say, you get a job and you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited, I'm in a job, but did I really deserve this, or was it a fluke? But the thing is, like, no, it wasn't. Like, you got the job, you got this thing for a reason. So, pat yourself on the back for that. That's another thing. And, I like to use imposter syndrome as like a fuel to motivate myself to keep learning, because it means you're uncomfortable in that space, and that means you're being challenged. So if you're not being challenged and you're just being comfortable and content with everything that's going on, then maybe that's not a good spot to be in, because you're not really growing. So I like to look at it that way if you are feeling imposter syndrome. For the portfolio part, I guess to get started, you don't need to like know how to code or create a website. There's tons of web builders out there, like Squarespace, Webflow, Wix, like there's so many of them. And I think so a lot of people like focus so much on making a pretty website. And I think that is important, having a portfolio website that has great UX, great visuals, but more importantly is the content. So I would focus on building the projects, building the great and detailed process in your case studies, and including them in your portfolio. And building a website, that's just kind of comes after, where you kind of plug everything into the website format, but really work on the content first. So that would be my advice for building a portfolio.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect. Oh, go ahead, PG.
I was just going to add, like, I think a good way to get started on a portfolio is to like forget about your website and just like write your case studies out in like Notion, or I guess even like Google Docs or whatever. So you can completely forget about making things look pretty, just like focus on the content, make something that's like concise, talks about your role, what you did, how you did it, your thinking. And then once you have the content down, you can start to make it look pretty in Webflow or Wix or whatever.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's a great spot for us to kind of finish off. I will say that you always have great resources in Design Buddies, Memorizely, other kinds of design communities that you might be a part of. So definitely use those to your advantage in terms of finding out new things about UX, meeting others, maybe collaborating on projects. Big shout out to Crystal, Jabri, PG, and Grace for sharing their journeys with us. Let's get a bunch of hearts or thank yous in the chat for them again. And thanks everybody for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks, everyone.
you.